Welcome to the Civic Trust podcast. My name is Alexander Lipka, and today we're joined by Matt Harder, founder and CEO of Civic Trust, the company helping cities across the U.S. design and deliver participatory budgeting processes that put real decision-making power in the hands of residents. On today's episode, we'll talk about the origins of civic trusts, lessons from the past, and how technology and trust can transform democracy. Thank you very much for joining us, Matt. How are you today?
Doing good, man.
For those who don't know, can you tell a bit about yourself, your background, how you first became interested in civic innovation?
Yeah, well, so my background has nothing to do with civic innovation, technically. Like, I just had a communications degree in college, but after that, when I was in my 20s, I was studying something called permaculture. I was studying sustainable agriculture, living in Costa Rica. And in that time, I was getting really interested in, like, systems and how certain systems work when, for example, like a plant needs to be in certain conditions. It needs to have it has necessary amount of sunlight, water, nutrition, like all these different conditions have to work for something to thrive. And like you have to accept all that if you're going to do like gardening, right? And so I was really getting into these systems, and I was away from the U.S. and I started kind of studying politics. Actually, I started reading a lot of libertarian theory, and I was just kind of like, why does the government not seem to be working? You know, why, as a system, as a different type of system, but a system that's run by people instead of nature, you know, what's the problem here? And one of the conclusions I came away with was the idea of democracy is that people get involved, right? If you read early accounts of democracy, people are involved in their community. It's done much more locally. People are more informed, and people are actually kind of like giving themselves to the process. And I realized in the modern era, we have this kind of managerial form of democracy, really. And I kind of looked at it and I was like, I don't think this managerial form is actually meant to work. Like, I don't think it's going to work. I don't think this idea that like you vote for one of two people, neither of which you might actually really like, and then you kind of leave it to them is going to work. And so that's when I realized I was like, okay, we have like a systems problem with our democracy right now. And I started thinking, what are we going to do about that? And I realized that the one kind of superpower that citizens have is technology. That's the one way that we can actually get all the information in one place, kind of make sense of what people are doing. We could, in theory, poll 300 million people and get an answer immediately. And then so we now have the technology to do that. It's just a question of our systems aren't really taking that up yet. They're not really integrating that yet. And so that was kind of my conclusion back then, was I was like, okay, we need to have a type of democracy that people lean into the way that they did in the early days, because I think that's really how it's supposed to work, is just like it's a collective intelligence thing. It's a thing where it's like we need to know what people think, and too many people are tuned out, and they're tuned out because the government's not listening to them. So if we use technology for them to know that the government is actually listening, for them to be able to participate in a way that makes sense to them, that's the way that democracy is actually going to work better in the 21st century. So that was kind of my aha moment a little over 10 years ago.
Gotcha. And would you say this inspired you to start Civic Trust? Was there a particular moment or challenge that sparked that idea?
There was a couple things probably, but like in 2011, we had the Occupy movement. You may or may not. You probably remember that. You were probably a young one at the time. But
yeah, I wasn't paying attention to it, but I've heard lots about it since college.
So I was very into it.
Okay.
Our mutual friend Nathan was also super into that, and that's who introduced us, right? And so I have a lot of friends from those days, but I was into that, and you know, it got me thinking about systems change. It got me thinking about the need from change coming from outside the system, because the system itself won't necessarily call for the reforms that need to happen. And at the time, it was amazing. There were so many different kinds of people involved, all political stripes, all economic backgrounds. Like it was beautiful. And so in that moment, I got this feeling like democracy could work, you know, like if you get a mix of people, and at the very beginning, and probably for another, maybe let's say like a month or two, people were focused on similar stuff, which was financial corruption, right? Occupy Wall Street was about financial corruption. So everybody had a goal. We were all contributing. And it was beautiful. And so that was very formative for me and probably changed my trajectory. And then, this is a big one, is that what happened was eventually they couldn't figure out how to make decisions. That was the thing. Yeah. And I remember seeing actually my experience with it. I was pretty heavily involved for about a year, but kind of near the middle and definitely near the end, I was realizing how how many opportunities were being wasted because you had so many people. I was, when I was in Manhattan, you'd have tech workers coming and opening up their laptops at the end of their shift just to volunteer their time, just to do anything they could. But we didn't know how to marshal the resources. We didn't know how to direct them. We didn't know how to make decisions because they were so radically flat, right? They were using this kind of Spanish anarchist model of decision making, which ultimately I think it's pretty clear it failed. It would be my argument. So that was my main take. Was I was like, it doesn't matter how many resources you have. It doesn't matter how much human capital you have. If you don't know how to direct it, your movement is dead in the water. And so it's like decision making is key. Yeah. And then, I was living in New York after that, and then just found my way to participatory budgeting through, I could tell you more about that. But once I found my way into it, I was like, this is the mechanism where people can make decisions and then actually kind of implement it in the system.
Yeah, gotcha. So specifically, for listeners new to this space, participatory budgeting, how would you describe what Civic Trust does, participatory budgeting, and how it does it?
It's a way to give people a say in how their tax dollars are spent, right? People intuitively want to be able to have a say over what kind of resources come into their neighborhood, right? They pay the taxes, but then they never have anything else to say about it, right? Because we live in this kind of managerial democracy, as I mentioned. It's like you leave it up to somebody else. You leave it up to a professional politician or somebody who makes it their business to do it. What PB does, participatory budgeting, which I'll refer to as PB because it's a lot easier, what that allows you to do is you can submit project ideas for your neighborhood, and then everybody who lives in that area can see everybody else's ideas and like them and kind of get informed by like, oh, these are all the different neighborhood upgrades. It could be things that are like aesthetic upgrades. It could be safety stuff, transportation stuff, just like whatever. People can submit those ideas, and then the city agencies actually look at those and say, these are the ones we can do, and this is what it would cost. And then that same neighborhood votes on which ideas they want to see come in with their tax dollars, right? So the city will start out with like $1 million and then say, okay, we have $1 million. What's your ideas? And people put all those ideas in, vote, and then the $1 million gets allocated to the winners of that vote, right?
Yeah, gotcha. So Civic Trust sounds like it has a solid format now, but more on the history. How has Civic Trust, your version of participatory budgeting, your process, evolved since it first began? Where'd you come from?
Well, so I started doing PB with the New York City Council around 2016, 2017. And at the time, they had a $40 million PB, which was pretty amazing. We would get like 100,000 voters. Mm-hmm. We'd be active in like 35 different districts, 17 languages. Like there was a lot going on. And I was in charge of the voting. I was a consultant in charge of collecting these 100,000 votes through paper and digital means and counting them, et cetera. And I did that as a consultant. And honestly, it was like I saw how powerful it was, kind of as a meme. I saw how positively people responded to the ability to have this kind of a say, to have like a very tangible say, like, hey, man, we need a bench here, or like our school needs an air conditioner. That was a big one, like things like that. And then it would show up and it would be done. And it's like there's something intuitive in the individual that you're like, that's what my government should be doing. It should be listening to me specifically. There shouldn't have to be some representative of me saying what I need. Yeah. This is something that I can say directly to the government. So I thought that was super powerful. But then there was a shakeup, and the PB in New York kind of it moved over from the council to the mayor, and it kind of just got like mixed up. And so in that process, I think they went out without PB for a little bit. But then so what happened was I saw it kind of go down. Mm-hmm. I didn't have, my company wound up going under, to be honest, when I was working with at the time, when that process went down. And I had, over the course of the 2 cycles that I worked with them, I had come up with all these ideas that I was like, this is very inspiring, but also they're running it in a way which is so much less user-friendly. Like it's so hard on the administrators. It's hard on the users. They weren't using almost any technology. Everything was paper-based. And so I was like, what if we made this actually really fun? Mm-hmm. Not just empowering, but also fun. Also something people wanted to do. That was kind of like the insight I had. And I was like, you have to use technology to do that. Back to calling back to what I was saying about technology being the powerful thing. It's like PB as a platform, as a conceptual platform was amazing. But the way they were running it was too hard for the city to do. And it wasn't rewarding enough for the citizen to do, citizen or resident.
Got it.
And so what I was like is, what if we use technology to make it easier for the city to run it, like make it like 1/5 as much of a lift, and then make it much more satisfying for the citizen or resident to do it, then then it can really take off. Then maybe you could do it everywhere. That was the hope. And so that's when I started Civic Trust, is I was like, we want technology to fill that gap and make it something that's like shareable and people are super into.
And Civic Trust has led a lot of projects in several U.S. cities. Can you walk us through a few examples that really stand out to you?
Yeah, we've only done a few, so I can tell you each one. I mean, the first one was in Atlanta. They had $1 million from the state, and they wanted to allocate it on transportation in a downtown corridor in Atlanta. And so the district we were working with, called District 2, shout out Amir Faruqi, my first client, he partnered with a business improvement district. So that business improvement district was going to be the place that received the funding. It just happened to be that all these businesses function on this corridor where he wanted to invest $1 million. So it was this great partnership where it's like all these businesses, hundreds of businesses were involved. And of course, the general public was too. We had thousands of participants from the general public, but the businesses were super into it and they were submitting all kinds of ideas. And so that was a transportation-focused $1 million PB where we partnered with a business improvement district. And so when Civic Trust does processes, I really love innovative partnerships. Like I think part of the managerial democracy that I'm trying to move away from is a relationship directly between citizens or residents and the government. And that's it. Because actually you want like a civic layer. You actually want a really active civic environment, whether that's a business improvement district or local nonprofits or anything, faith communities, even though we haven't partnered with any, but just like groups of people. Like I think that's necessary. So in the first one, we had this business improvement district, and that was a fun partnership, and that was a great process. The second one we did back in Atlanta, again, was very different. They only had $50K, and it was to fix up a park. So they went out and they got in touch with the local nonprofits. So they had like a parks conservancy, they had a neighborhood organization, and they said, hey, we're looking at doing projects in the park. Do you want to help us out? Do you want to just like get us some ideas or whatever? And they said, we'll one up that. Not only will we get people to give you ideas and to vote and all that, but we've also got projects. And if we're able to put our projects on your ballot, then we will fund part of it. So we turned that $50K into $110K, which was amazing because they were just saying, look, we've been waiting for years. For like 30 years, they've been trying to fix up a bathroom. We've been waiting to try and fix up this pool. We've been waiting to try to do like weed abatement, whatever. So we'll put it on your ballot, and then if it wins, that's cheaper for us because we were going to foot the whole bill. Yeah. Now, if you guys bring the money, it's cheaper for you. You get the project. It's cheaper for us, and then we'll bring everybody, all the people in the neighborhood to come and help out with the install and whatever. And so that was amazing because it was a much smaller PB, but we got like 4 different nonprofits involved and actually wound up raising the budget. So much more grassroots type of vibe, right? Mm-hmm. And then most recently, we've done one in Denver. So we just finished. That was a $1 million PB. And the really cool thing with that is that was like deeply embedded in the city. So we would have these calls with like 11 different agencies that were all vetting the projects and looking into it. And in those calls, we would have people from the different agencies like making comments like, this is so amazing to collaborate in this way. We never get the chance to do this. They clearly feel a little too siloed. And they're like, we'd be talking about, what about putting a bike trail through this particular area, bike lane? And one agency would say, yeah, okay, well, we could be in charge of doing that, and another agency would say, well, we have like a grant for environmental stuff. So we could actually help fund that idea too. And we could, and they're all of a sudden collaborating on the same ideas. It was like this great format. Yeah. And I realized that like this is a way to actually help innovate the way that these agencies communicate. So those are the 3 major ones. We've got another one going in Pennsylvania, which is a different model as well. I'll just mention it really quick, which is a local nonprofit whose goal is to improve the town of Kennett Square. They put up $50,000, and then a local financial organization, which is the biggest employer, called Chatham Financial, they also put up $50,000. So then we had $100,000. And so the financial organization is able to give back to the community in a way which is super effective because you're going to get thousands of participants saying exactly which projects are most effective to them. The nonprofit is able to be really effective because they're getting the same thing. They're like, they're touching base with all these different people in the community to get their input. And then that nonprofit gets to collaborate with the city for the install. So now they're improving their relationship with the city. They've been talking about that. Like, we're having all these great meetings, and I'm learning so much from like the way that the agencies do things. So again, all these relationships get built when you do that. And that's what the amazing thing. So even though different projects take different forms, there's always really cool relationships.
What are some of the major obstacles during these processes?
Honestly, I wouldn't say that there are obstacles during the process. That's the truth. Yeah. It's like, because our whole goal and what we do is we put together like a really clean roadmap. It's going to take probably like 9 to 12 months to run that roadmap. It takes effort and organization, but there aren't really, like snags that you hit. The hardest part is just getting the money up front. The hard part is for the city to say, we've secured 50 grand, 100 grand, $1 million, $2 million. We have $2 million starting in Denver. Like in 3 weeks, they have a $2 million PB getting started. So it's like getting that getting those initial funds is hard. Yeah. But once you have it, the thing runs very well.
Okay, awesome. With the completion of these processes, what outcome matters most to you personally? What do you want to see?
I think it takes place on at least 2 or 3 levels, right? And so it's like, I judge our success by whether the users, whether the residents have had a positive experience with the city, which I think of as a positive experience with democracy. That to me is the highest priority, right? Is that like people who are formerly not engaged, because like 30+% of our users have never engaged with the government. Yeah. And so, because we're finding hard to reach people, right? And so that's a super high priority for me, is that they get engaged with the government, they have a touch point, and it's very positive. And they tell us that, right? They give us good survey data around that. So giving positive experiences with the government is super important as an outcome. I think for the government to become more comfortable with citizen feedback is super important, because a lot of times they're kind of scared because they can find, you can get adversarial relationships between the government and the citizenry. And this is kind of an idea of being like, no, we can be very constructive. We can listen to the citizens and get feedback from them, and the whole thing could wind up very positive, right? Like they could love what goes in. There's no pushback. There's no resistance, because the process is designed to figure out what everybody actually wants. Yeah. So it winds up being very positive. And so it's the city learning that too. And then the agencies like having a positive experience and just kind of being like, wow, we can listen to the citizens. We don't have to be so siloed, right? That's super, super important.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Speaking more on the technology of Civic Trust and how this runs, how do you see technology shaping the future of community engagement?
I think that's a deep question, right? Mm. I think it depends on different timelines, right? I think in the short term, it'll be stuff like this. It'll be kind of one-off projects at the city level, and hopefully it's like creates a positive impression and creates kind of like a sense of innovation to the city. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a minor effect, to be honest with you, because what needs to happen with civic engagement and technology is political parties or large political organizations need to use it for enfranchisement. Yeah. They need to use it to say, we're going to listen to our members. We want to know exactly what our members want. We want to know how well they're approving of our performance. We want to know what their priorities are. We want to be accountable to their priorities. We want to give them feedback on how well we're meeting the goals that they have set for us, that our constituents have set for us. Like, that's what civic technology is destined to be, mm-hmm. is to be a way for a place where you can go and make sense of how well your political representatives are representing your views as a group. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's what's necessary. But the reason I say that's a midterm thing is right now, major political organizations, particularly political parties, are not interested in enfranchisement. They don't mind the fact that they're able to completely call the shots and that citizens are forced to vote for one of the two. Yeah. And so that's a way off, because there's resistance in the present system for accepting that kind of input and accepting that kind of enfranchisement, right? Because then they don't get to call the shots. Then they're actually open. Then they're actually collaborative, which changes the power structure. Mm-hmm. But I do believe that it is absolutely destined for democracy and technology to fuse into something where not only will people be giving the input that I was talking about, but that organizations who are able to show how faithfully they represent the views of their people through proving it through technology, they will outcompete the current ones. Like if you look at the favorability of Democrats and Republicans together, like they're nosediving. Mm-hmm. And it's because people feel left out. They don't feel. And so what this technology ultimately is going to do is going to create organizations where people feel that they're actually in the driver's seat. Mm-hmm. And those organizations will outcompete the old organizations. Yeah. So that's where it's going to go.
Yeah. And Civic Trust has improved applied technology in democratic sense.
I mean, we've created an experience that a lot of people feel is super intuitive, even though it didn't really even exist before. I mean, when you live in a neighborhood and somebody says, "What's your idea?" Throw it on this platform. And you say you want to fix up the volleyball courts, right? So you get a picture of some volleyball courts and you describe, hey, we play on this every week and we wind up like scraping our knees because the sand really sucks and it's like super dusty. We want some, a sprinkler on it or whatever. When you do that and you see all these and you see everybody's ideas, it's not just your idea, that's just the idea that you put in, but you're going to see 100 ideas from other people. Like that feels like something that should be offered to you, to your community by your government. Like what are your ideas directly? Like what do you guys think? And you feel more connected to your neighborhood in a way just through seeing all these different things. You're like, okay, cool. This is like everybody's idea. And so I think just creating a process which feels organic and it feels natural. It doesn't even feel exactly futuristic because it feels so intuitive. That is a major achievement, right? The whole thing feels like that. Like the major piece of feedback we get is just like governments. Of course, they should be doing this. Like, of course they should. It's not like not like wow, it's a stretch. It's just like this is obvious. Like so that's an achievement.
Yeah. I mean, you've had statistics to prove that, being 99% approval rate in downtown decides Atlanta.
Yeah.
Which what democratic process has ever had that kind of feedback?
Yeah, we asked them if this was a good type of civic engagement, if they support the city doing it, and we get 97 to 99% yes on every single process. Yeah. Right? So like everybody just sees it as a no-brainer. That's the achievement. The achievement is providing the government with an opportunity to give a service to their citizenry that they just think is awesome, that just like makes sense, and people feel the government is innovating. And when do people feel that about the government? Other than when do people ever feel like the government's innovating? So it's like never. We're giving them that, like, hey, show people you can innovate, and people want that, they love that. Yeah. So like it's just one step in government innovation. I mean, eventually we're going to go much further, but it's just that first step, I think, it's an energy shift, right? It's a vibe shift, you could say, right? Between people and the government. It's like, whoa, the government's actually doing something I think is super cool. That's never happened before.
No, I've never said that before.
Yeah.
A little more on what we're doing right here today at CU Boulder, the podcast. What was the goal of launching the Civic Trust podcast for you?
I just think there's so many cool things happening in the space that I'd love to talk to people about it and just kind of learn more about it. The other thing, to be honest with you, is there is such a kind of a division, some kind of a wall between the average person and government innovation, let's say. It's like if you try and find government people talking about what government does, honestly, it'll probably put you to sleep a lot of the time. I hate to say that, but it's true. Even myself. Like, it's just kind of like, oh, it's so bureaucratic. It's so like sort of methodical and whatever, right? But it's like, that's not how government should be for people, right? It shouldn't be like, it's your government. It's a democratic society. And so I want to have a place where we can have conversations that make sense to people, where they're actually hearing like, here's how the government's actually working. Here's how it's doing things better. I want people to have the expectation. I mean, one of the big goals of Civic Trust is to give people the expectation that the government innovates just like everything else innovates. You assume your iPhone's going to innovate. You assume your gaming system or your television or your car, all these different things are constantly in a state of innovation, but the government, for whatever reason, not only does it not really innovate, but people don't even have the expectation that it innovates, but it should. The way that we all collaborate, the way that we all distribute resources, the way we all collectively decision make, that can be collaborated, that can be innovated on, right? That can be made better, that can be made more fun, that can be made more transparent, and then be more attractive. And then when you do that, you change the direction of how democracy is functioning, from functioning worse to functioning better, to getting more people involved because they want to be involved. They're not guilted into being involved, like, oh, it's my duty, although I don't really want it. It's like, eat your broccoli. It's like, no, I want to be involved because it's cool, because it's effective. I see it changing my life for the better. I want to be involved. Mm-hmm. So it's creating the expectation that, like, my representatives should be able to deliver that to me. That's what they should be able to do, right? And so I want to have a place where we can have those kinds of conversations.
Yeah, most definitely. And with these conversations, who do you want to include on the Civic Trust podcast?
Who do I want to include?
Yeah.
I mean, just former clients at the beginning and people who have had experience with it, and just like learn about their experiences. And then just other people who are doing, making advances and innovations in the civic space, just to get started and see where we go from there.
Dead or alive, who's your dream guest?
I'll do dead and alive.
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
Dead would be... a founding father like a George Washington or a Jefferson, because I would just be very interested to resurrect one and walk them around in 2025 and be like, what should we be doing now? Like, you knew what you wanted to do before we had electricity, before we had the internet, before we had any modern communications and all this kind of stuff. And you made a pre-electricity democracy, right? Which worked so well in that time. Now that we have all these different technologies, like, what do we do now? What's the next step? Just to hear from them, I would love to know, like, what they really think, because we would do it way different. We would design all this stuff way different, but nobody has a very good answer for that question. So I'd be curious what they think. Yeah. I would say alive. Honestly, it would be Elon Musk would be the best one. I'll tell you why, even though not everybody's going to love that answer. But the truth is because I think people who have the financial resources and authority to create civic change from the outside are very interesting. So it's like, so for example, Elon Musk has his own city now, Starbase, Texas.
I never heard of that.
He made that. Yeah, that's where they launched the Mars rockets.
Okay.
So that incorporated as a city last year.
Wow.
So he has a city.
Yeah.
And so it's like, how do people with all these resources who are in a very unique position to change the way decisions are made and to actually use technology to make things more efficient, more representative? Now, I don't know if that's a concern of his particularly, and probably not, right? He's got other things to worry about. But people like that, like, I wonder to myself how much innovation can come from that kind of a model in the next 20 years, where they're just kind of going, look, we just want to get this stuff done right. We're not going to be saddled with all the old ways of doing things. Yeah. I think innovation comes from that sector some of the time.
Gotcha. Why is this kind of conversation around citizen engagement and community innovation important right now?
It's important right now because everybody knows that our democracy is in decline. Everybody knows it. And that's a survival issue for us as a society. Like, democracy is not designed to work when people are checking out and people don't like it. It's designed to work when people are getting involved, when people actually think that it's worth the time and effort, when people actually think it's going to represent them, if they actually take the time to do it. That's how democracy works. And so it's like, we need to change this trend from a negative direction to a positive direction. And we need to give people fun and rewarding experiences in which to do it. Like, people don't check out because they're lazy. Like, people blame TikTok or they blame, people just like wanting to game. But I see it completely differently than that. Like, what I see is that, yes, people's standards for what will hold their attention have increased. But if you go and you look at the forms of engagement that the government offers people, they are boring. They are objectively boring. And they are, beyond boring, they're also, they're not rewarding. They're not obvious to the person. Like, what difference did it make? I went to the council meeting. Let's say, for example, I went to the council meeting. I waited for 2 hours. I stood at the mic for 3 minutes. The commissioners or whoever, the council members, were like playing on their phone. I got off the mic. I walked out. I killed my whole night. What happened? What happened? Right? Like, that's our form of civic engagement. So we expect people to do that in droves? No. You can talk to people and you've said, hey, have you ever been engaged with the city? A common thing for me to hear is, yeah, I've been engaged with the city. I tried it. It didn't feel like it did anything. Okay? That's a logical reason to check out. So we need to provide people with options that are rewarding so that they don't check out logically, right? And that's on the city to do that. That's on our democracy to do that. Say, hey, we're going to give you rewarding opportunities to get involved so that you want to. We're going to be attractive rather than, again, treating it like eat your broccoli, show up to some boring meeting. There have to be other on-ramps, right?
Yeah, most definitely. Now that we're coming to the end of the episode a little bit, I just wanted to ask you, what do you hope our listeners will take away from this first conversation? What do we do now?
I mean, what I hope is, and I already mentioned something like this before, which is I hope people develop an expectation that their government innovates. Like, I think it's necessary. I think we need to evolve out of this stage where we're picking the lesser of two evils. And for whatever reason, like, we're brainwashed into just like rah-rahing our own side. Even if we know our own side isn't really executing very well, even if we know that they're not really being very transparent, we're sort of hypnotized and just be like, no, but they're great because the other side is evil. Like, that is a trap. Like, the present political dynamic, the polarization is a trap. Yeah. And what I want people to think about is, like, how about the government just doing stuff better, being more transparent, being more inviting? Like, that's what I want. I want my representatives to say that. And I don't really care what color or brand they come with, are they blue, are they red, or what. That's not really that big of a deal. Are they innovating on this stuff? Are they making this more inviting and rewarding? And you know what I mean? Are they getting things done and inviting me in and being collaborative? That's the expectation and that's the standard. But people need to have that. That needs to come from us because politicians aren't going to campaign on that if people aren't even talking about it and thinking about it. So we have to have that desire.
Yeah. Where could someone learn a little bit more about Civic Trust or participatory budgeting themselves?
Well, you can go to our website at civictrust.us. You can also just email me at matt@civictrust.us. I'll chat with anybody.
If you could summarize your vision for the future of civic engagement in 1 to 2 sentences, would you be able to, and how?
So I think what I would say is you should feel like you're running the government, and you should keep pushing until you do.